Hi, my name is Bob Gamble. I'm recording this video of myself to post on the internet. In response to this video that I recently seen online about the Church at War conference in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. I used to work for the region of Waterloo up until July 2022. And I used to attend the church not far from our house that was pastored by this man. Nate Wright was employed as the pastor of that church, Crossroads Alliance Church. The Church of A.W. Tozer has changed a lot since his day, but I feel compelled to record this video of myself to post on the internet because of the controversy in the churches here in Canada and our family's experience at Crossroads Alliance Church. COVID-19 was a confusing time. March 2020, many things were shut down in Canada. At that time, we were told by public health not to mask, stay home. It was very strange. 2 weeks to stop the spread was the plan. But it dragged on for 2 months, 3, 4 months. I remember being redeployed for my job at the municipality, working in public transit. It's actually with the Human Resources Department, which was interesting through the pandemic, working with health and safety, etc. Was redeployed to the municipality's long-term care facility probably around May of 2020, where I learned to properly don and doff my mask. Nobody was wearing a mask at that time because they weren't effective to stop the spread, which later changed, and confusing time. I never really thought too much about the impact on the church initially. We had been attending Crossroads since July or August of 2018. We moved to the area, and it's kind of an interesting story how we ended up at Crossroads, but I'll leave that for now. It's about 10 kilometers from our house. We live out in the country. The church is out in the country. But that's where we ended up. And somewhat disheartened with our experience of church since our conversion. Maybe about 18 years ago. We attended church on a regular basis. I was involved in Sunday school. I was asked to teach the Sunday school little kids. So I agreed to do that. As part of the cadets program at the church, I was a counselor there. And although I wouldn't say we were wholeheartedly engaged in church life, we were trying to serve not cause any problems. Was the church healthy? I'm not the judge of that. But one gets the impression that no, the church is not healthy. And do they want to improve their condition? My feeling was no, they did not want to improve their condition. But we were well aware of Hebrews 10. Probably not a week went by where the passage did not come into mind as I packed up the 4 kids and headed off to church, often by myself because my wife is a nurse that works occasionally on the weekends, often on the weekends. So it'd be me and the kids heading down to church. And we love the people of God. There was people there that we talked to on a regular basis. And sitting through the order of service was sometimes a challenge. I'm not one that believes commuting to church is the way to go. I believe that we ought to do our best to agree and get along with the believers in our own community. Crossroads was not too far from our house, so we attended there. We did not cause any trouble. I did arrange one meeting with Nate, as well as a young pastor that had come up from the United States after they had done a sermon on strange teaching about post-millennialism. Anyhow, didn't really think too much about the church through COVID. I assumed, like many other churches, they were doing their services online. We did not tune in to the services online because I didn't really think that was what church was all about. And for us, it was more about gathering together with the people of God, speaking with the people before and after church, sitting through the order of service. I did not sing at Crossroads during the worship time. I felt somewhat paralyzed because of our previous experience at other churches before we moved to this area. One of they were a contemporary style of worship, or I shouldn't say worship, but of singing and perhaps even offering praise to God. On the PowerPoint, they would often have um, the composer of the songs, and I knew that some of the composers were surrounded in controversy. Recall seeing Hillsong there, and was familiar with some of the strange things that was going on with the Hillsong church, and also some of the lyrics of the newer contemporary songs seemed unscriptural. Didn't complain. I only mentioned one time in a small group that I thought it was humorous. There was a song that was very upbeat, very, very upbeat song, but the lyrics were, talking about the wrath of God coming down. And I just thought that was kind of funny, but otherwise did not express my views on the music. Just try to attend, serve where possible, have fellowship with the saints. We gave a little bit of money, did not tithe faithfully because um, we we uh, we spend about 20% of our net income on the children's school, the private school, and we do consider that to be a form of giving to the Lord's work, and not really being overly involved in the church, was not very familiar with what was happening with the funds. I'm not big on church membership. Well, I'm very big on church membership, but not the formal denominational type. Where you, I don't know what the procedure was exactly, but if you're part of the church, you're part of the church. In terms of the institutional aspects, I've never really had much interest in that, whether it be the Salvation Army, putting on the uniform, forsaking the sacraments of baptism and the Lord's Supper. Um, I've always been a little bit cynical about the institutional church, to be honest, but I've learned to keep my mouth shut and not cause any trouble and show up, look for inroads to help improve the condition of the church. But anyhow, regarding COVID-19, it was my wife that first brought to my attention the discontent of Crossroads with the public health mandates. I was not following the communications that were coming out from the church. But my wife told me of an email that she had received from the church, from Pastor or Nate, expressing his concern how easily the church gave up on the weekly service. And at that time, I was fairly indifferent. I was experiencing my own experiences with COVID-19 at work as a part of a large workforce. Um, we definitely encountered the full spectrum of opinions about the COVID-19. The extreme fear, the conspiracy mindset. So I was right in the middle of it all, and hearing a number of different opinions on a daily basis about what was happening. But truth be told, it was hard to get reliable information on the whole thing throughout the pandemic. I thought it was interesting when my wife told me about that email. Um, it made me realize that I had uh, come to a low view of the church, and really did not. I was not investing my heart in the church at that time, and just accepted the fact that it is what it is. Uh, the church is unhealthy, um, and there's not much desire to change. The elders are who they are, and the the clergyman or the pastor, it seems to be the elders and the clergy that really dictate the direction of the church. And from past experience, they do not regard the opinions of the parishioners um, very seriously. One of the big topics throughout the pandemic was the services that were deemed essential by the government. And I understand the controversy around the essential services, and can understand the frustration with what was deemed essential and what was not. Um, I totally understand uh, the odd restrictions that were in place for outdoor activities and things like this. Couldn't play around in golf. Uh, it's very, very strange, but anyhow. So as the restrictions eased, came back in place, we would attend church. We would be locked out again. Throughout the pandemic in Ontario, there was an exemption for churches to meet. I believe at the lowest point, it might have been 5, but typically minimum of, or sorry, a maximum of 10. And then periodically, things would open up so we could meet at 30% capacity, which is what Crossroads did throughout the pandemic until the very end, basically. Until it was almost over. They followed the protocol. Yes, there was some people in the church that didn't mask, and that was their choice. It's not something that I was looking to get upset about. I know there were some people in the church that did take offense to those that wouldn't wear a mask, but by and large, it was let everyone decide for themselves. Um, with the 30% capacity, I don't recall ever counting heads to ensure that they were compliant, but showing some regard for the public health protocol. Uh, that was our mindset, something that I was required to follow at work. If we did not follow the protocol at work, we would receive coaching, and beyond that, progressive discipline and perhaps leading determination. Same with my children's school, the Christian school. They were required to mask when they were at school, and my wife as well at work was obviously in long-term care, required to follow the protocol as well. So um, I don't think that we were sticklers about it, but our thought was, well, it's not really harming us. I did ask the children if they were affected by the masking and whatnot, and they looked at me strangely and said no. Around the time that my wife had mentioned that email, I started to follow the communications from Crossroads because I was interested in what they were saying, and I to an extent I respected their opinion about the importance of meeting, and some of the strange restrictions that were in place, what was allowed, what was not allowed. And I recall at one point in the pandemic receiving a communication from Nate to the effect that they were sending a letter to I think it might have been an open letter, it might have been a personal letter, I don't recall, but to the member of parliament, and to the effect that if there was any more lockdowns, they would not comply. And I thought it was strange timing, and I thought it was, you know, presenting that type of ultimatum to the member of parliament. I thought it was a little bit odd, but nevertheless, we continued to attend at the 30% capacity. Crossroads provided masks for the children at one point. I think I typically had my own, um, but we kept on going to the church. We didn't really express our views, but We did catch wind of some of the other members that were upset about the uh, the fact that not everyone was following the masking and whatnot. I think there were folks at the church that possibly had uh, medical conditions that would make them vulnerable in the event they got COVID-19. But I just want to go ahead and play a little clip of this video here uh, of Nate uh, giving his perspective of how all these things played out at Crossroads.
So we drank. Okay.
So Nate, you had about 150 at your church at the beginning of the pandemic. You kind of want to talk a little bit of flesh out what's going on in your church and where you're at now.
Yeah, sure. At the beginning of COVID, we had about like before COVID hit, we had about 150 people, and then when we stayed open, I promptly grew that to 100. So we had like a mass exodus. Yeah, we lost about a third of our church, and wow.
So when I watched this video the other day, I haven't really been following Nate and Crossroads. The controversy about COVID really reached its pinnacle in the church. I believe it was around March of 2021. And that is when we were in a lockdown, and Crossroads. I remember speaking to an elder that had called our house throughout the pandemic, and I asked them why we weren't having small group meetings at the church, which were permitted in groups of 10. I suggested that we meet for prayer, and while they were doing small groups, which was not permitted, we were not permitted to meet in private residences. So I had asked, why don't we just hold these at the church where it is permitted? It's the same thing. If 10 meet at the church or 10 meet in someone's home, there is essentially no difference. So why wouldn't we do that? And he had no response to that, other than he said that the individuals would suffer less consequences under the law than the institution of the church, which I thought that was a little bit backwards. That kind of like throwing the members of the church under the bus. Well, they and it doesn't even make any sense because they were allowed to meet at the church in groups of 10. That was permitted. So that was my recommendation, and they did not do that. So when we went to the restrictions where it was a maximum of 10 in the church, we did not meet. The elder did ask me if I would be interested, and I'm thinking maybe he was inviting me to the barn, but I said that I had no interest in any illegal activities, because my conviction was that there was opportunity to do things in a legal manner that would fulfill our responsibility before the Lord to meet and to bear ourselves before the Lord, and to express to the Lord that we understand the gravity of this moment and everything that's been leading up to this moment. So, but that was not something that they chose to do. Anyhow, so when we were in a lockdown, things were getting better. They were watching the numbers, and the government was anticipating opening things back up. And by this time, the controversy in the church was in full effect. I think there was a lot going on behind the scenes that I was not aware of, but there was definitely some controversy happening there with the 50 that Nate is laughing about, leaving the church. And I don't recall anyone making a big fuss at the church. The people that I spoke to, one man in particular, it seemed like he was, at the head of every project happening at the church, a real handyman, but was, not happy with the response. I'm not sure if it was because he was a bit older. I recall the head counselor for the cadets program. Again, he was, in favor of cooperation with the mandates. But everything came to a head at, I think it was March 2021, when the restrictions were about to be eased again, and they were going to open back up to 30% capacity. And I remember saying to my kids, I said, all right, kids, we're going to go to church again on Sunday. Because by this point, I realized that, I really do like going to church. I mean, in spite of all the obvious weaknesses in the local church, um, I really do have a sincere love for the brethren and the sisters as well. And we were looking forward to going to church. So I told the kids we'd be going to church on Sunday when they opened things back up. And we got an email from Nate that said, it's time that we all come back together and we unite and, we make peace. And it was kind of a strange email. So I followed up and I asked him in the email that I sent to him, I said, are you going to be following the 30% capacity? And he said, no. And I thought that was really strange because how is that making peace when you have a disagreement, right? And the people that, want to regard the mandates and those that don't, how is it making peace if you don't offer any concession to the folks that do want to follow the mandates? So that was a little bit strange, and we opted not to go to church that week because, I wouldn't have minded, if coincidentally 35% had showed up or 40% had showed up. I mean, we're not, we're not sticklers about that, but insisting that we hold one service is what they were meaning, that we all come together at one service. And of course, the folks that were compelled by conscience not to do that because of the mandates, what was left for them to do? Throughout the pandemic, the argument coming from Nate, and well, not throughout. I mean, the odd thing is Nate was willing to comply for, it seemed like, about the first year of the pandemic, and if there was something inherently immoral about this, then I mean, I've heard people talk about a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks that they would go along, but Crossroads seemed to be going along for about a year or more. So if there was anything inherently immoral about the complying with the mandates or whatnot, Crossroads was following them for the longest time. So, and some of us wanted to continue to follow because we do have jobs and we do have to follow the mandates while we're at work, while the kids are at school. I recall one of the other prominent pastors that was promoting civil disobedience, saying, well, I have to wear a mask at Costco because they make me. Well, they make us wear masks at work and at the kids' school, right? It seems that the pastors, they're so far removed from what it's like to actually live in the world and experience day-to-day life in the world that, you know, if you're going to wear a mask in Costco, then, it's obviously not an immoral thing to wear a mask. I mean, if it was immoral, you shouldn't wear it in Costco, even if they want they want to force you, then you should find some other way of doing your shopping. But there is nothing immoral about wearing a mask. So many of us, although we didn't, rely on the mask to save our lives, we understood the mandates, and we were willing to comply because there was no reason not to. Anyhow, so what bothers me about all of this is we never told anyone what they should do, but we sat through sermons for about the second half of the pandemic, where the the speaker, Nate, would insinuate that anyone who didn't hold his point of view was a coward. And I know this really bothered particularly some of the older members of the church. I remember one man in particular talking to me about it. He was really upset. Nate had preached a sermon about Gideon and how the cowardly soldiers were to go home. And this really upset the man. And my purpose isn't to criticize Nate's preaching, but I never really found that Nate was, on point with his ministry of the word to begin with. He's a young man, and has some growth that's needed. So we accepted that, and there wasn't really any better alternatives in the area, anyways. And we'd already been driving by the Fellowship Baptist after a couple of bad experiences there with some of the American leaders that they were promoting, and the Anglican and United churches. We didn't feel we could practice our faith with any measure of sincerity there either. So we drove by the three churches and ended up at Crossroads. And we could have gone in the other direction about the same distance, but we didn't. And there's a story there, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So I thought it was a little bit deceptive when Nate sent out that email saying that we all need to come together. And it was unclear. I mean, how are we going to come together when we have different points of view? And there was no clarification about the fact that no, there's not going to be any regard for the 30% capacity at the service. So I almost second guessed myself before I emailed Nate asking if they were going to be following the 30% capacity, as they had been up until that point in the pandemic. They had always followed it, and I assumed that they would again. But I guess at this point they decided that it didn't matter what the other people felt compelled by conscience to do. So we didn't go to church that week. And there was a church meeting the same night. And our family, well, myself and the 4 kids, we attended remotely. Although we were not members, we were welcome to attend the meeting because we wanted to know what was going to happen going forward. And of course, someone asked the question that everyone wanted to know. They said, are you going to offer any services for people that feel compelled by their conscience to show some regard for the public health requirements? And Nate's response was somewhat convoluted. He explained to us that he knew the church would look differently when this was all over. And although it was a convoluted response, I took that to mean that you guys can leave now. If you're not going to get on board with what we're doing, you guys can leave now. So that's what we did. We were going to continue with the cadets program, my son and I, because I was a counselor and my son was in cadets. But unfortunately, the issue was causing the same type of division in the cadet program for the boys. It was kind of funny actually because I believe it was March and it was just the tail end of winter. Things were warming up, and one of the counselors said, "Well, a good workaround solution would be to hold the meeting outside. We'll have a campfire and we'll be outside, a good place for cadets, and we wouldn't have to wear our masks out there." And some of the counselors who were not in favor of the following the mandates, they made a fuss and said it was too cold to go outside. And it wasn't that cold. I mean, it wasn't 40 below or anything like that. It was cold and there was some snow outside, but there's no reason why we couldn't have done it that way. So my son was getting awkward vibes from the whole thing, and he didn't really understand. He was following the mandates at school, and it just got a little bit awkward. So we didn't go to the cadets anymore. We moved on to a church, uh, probably about 10 kilometers away from Crossroads, so about twice the distance for us to drive from our home to this new church. And we joined the cadet program there, and we've been attending the church meetings there. But frankly, our attendance has not been that good at the new church, and yeah, we're hoping to improve that. But anyhow, so I continued to follow the movement, the civil disobedience movement. At one point, Nate had sent out an email saying, "Well, it's not just us. There's a couple other churches in the province and country that have the same point of view." And they pointed us in the direction of Trinity Bible Chapel in Waterloo. And so I began following the Trinity Bible on YouTube, and trying to engage. I didn't feel like I could engage with Nate and Crossroads. I know that there was a lot of strain in that church, and I didn't really want to stir up the pot. And quite frankly, I mean, it could have become very personal with these people that we had been meeting with for 2 years. Basically driving away our family from their church. So I did not engage with Crossroads too much. A couple times, maybe I left a comment on their YouTube or something like that, or perhaps a Facebook. Now, I think it's important to note that there were two occasions that I did email the elders at Crossroads, respectfully expressing our point of view and our concern, never making any demands. But the first time I emailed them was after they had recommended the Trinity Bible Chapel. And by this time, Trinity Bible Chapel was quite prominent in the local news, the Waterloo News, where I was working at the time for the municipality. And the paper, really no surprise, what was really misunderstanding the Christian teaching, and seemed to have the idea that there was no life available to the church apart from the weekly gathering, the Sunday service, which is not true. And I recall, clipping a few quotes from that article and sending it to the elders at Crossroads, just asking that they think these things through carefully and express themselves carefully, so they're not sending the wrong idea to the community through the news, because they were being misrepresented in the papers. So just be careful with what you're saying. because you know, when we see articles in the paper, it's natural for the believer to have a certain jealousy for the you know, for the name of Christ and his church, which was being maligned in the paper. I received no response to that email at all, and that was disappointing. But I didn't make a fuss about that. And then again, after Nate had you know, announced on the meeting that he knew that the church was going to look different after after the lockdown. I sent the email to the elders and Nate, again, respectfully saying that you guys have taken a position which will exclude us from attending the meeting in good conscience, and we're really left with no other option but to find somewhere else to fellowship. And again, received no response at all from Nate. So it's it is what it is, and you know, it's been hard. I don't think that we've really internalized this. I don't think that there's really a sense of anger or bitterness, but you know, it's hard to watch Nate, you know, basically laughing at the fact that he's driven away 50 people from the congregation, because I know many of these people, and they were not fanatics, they were not unreasonable people, and he's laughing at them. But there was another point in the interview that I thought was really, really interesting.
Lots of people writing to our denomination. We had people who even left who were calling the cops on our services, trying to get us shut down.
Wow.
What's your denomination?
It's the Alliance.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. So we're no longer affiliated there.
Yeah, so obviously the people, you know, probably not the right move to call the police. That's their prerogative to do that, but I'm not sure who would have been doing that. But and I'm not sure how they found out it was someone from the church that was calling. I don't think the police would disclose that information, or at least they shouldn't be. But
Through all of this, but yeah, so they're calling to get me fired and all that stuff. So we had about 100 people who met during lockdown, and
the Alliance Church is not what it used to be, and that's not the purpose of this video. But there was another part I
and at first, like you said, we're out in the middle of nowhere. Like if you sneeze and the corn is high, you'll just miss us as you're driving down the country road. But slowly, just through word of mouth and people looking for an open church, we grew and we grew. So like last Sunday we met and there was over 800 people at church.
Wow.
And so over the last 2 years, we've gone from that little church of 100 people to a church of over 800 people. And we're just trying to keep up. We're trying to, you know, train up small group leaders and elders, because none of us have ever been a part of a church this size. And we have people moving into the area. We have people homesteading and everything for the first time, learning how to do that. And so just the ministry is happening. And I kind of jokingly say it's not just that we had an influx of people, but they say at a lot of churches, 20% of the people do 80% of the work. And I feel like we got everybody else's 20%ers, like all the people who take church seriously,
Wow.
who are willing to count the cost and go. And honestly, and all like homeschoolers, right? And when I was going through and I was like, what is it that links the people who seem to have their heads screwed on straight about all this stuff? Is it a particular doctrine? Is it a particular hermeneutic? But honestly, the thing that linked all these families who were looking for a faithful church was homeschooling. And so we now have like just this thriving homeschooling.
And so that is it there, and the homeschooling. And I respect people that do their homeschooling. I think that's a good option for some people. And I know a lot of faithful families that homeschool, because the private school is very expensive and just not feasible for a lot of families. I just think it's interesting that Nate has made this observation that basically the people that are coming to the church are people that really have no involvement in day-to-day life in the world. And of course, the Bible teaches that we live in the world and we interact with the world, but we have this sort of separatist mindset that these people don't really have any involvement, whether it be through the school or there's no contact point for these people. Where like the pastor from Trinity says, I have to wear a mask at Costco, right? Well, these people don't have to wear a mask at homeschool. I mean, they just do their own thing, and it's just interesting that that's the observation. You know, anyhow. So I just wanted to make this video and post it on the internet because it's really there's only one church in Thamesford, Ingersol. So the church is in between Thamesford and Ingersol, and there's only one church in Thamesford and Ingersol, and that's the Church of Jesus Christ. And the fact that the so-called pastor would laugh that he's driven away 50 people from the church because they didn't have his point of view about rebelling against the mandates at a time where the government was actually opening or allowing the churches to gather in 30%. And 30% capacity was basically the average weekly attendance before all this. So, I mean, it really just seemed like a my way or the highway sort of thing. And I don't really think that the correct point of view is, or the correct facts about what happened here are actually getting out. It seems like when these folks speak to how things played out in the pandemic, they seem to say that someone in the church was trying to tell them that, and perhaps there were some saying, well, you guys shouldn't be doing this, but that wasn't our case. I mean, for most of us at the church, we weren't telling them what to do. We were just looking for a place where we could also gather in good faith and conscience. And that was not provided by the elders at Crossroads, even though they were well aware that there were people attending that church who wanted to meet throughout the pandemic, whether the capacity be 10 people for small groups of prayer or 30% capacity for the, uh, the order of service that they follow, the contemporary music and the uh, the 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 speech or whatever by Nate that he would give each week. Um, the real point is that we understand our obligation and we have a desire to meet together, but we were not afforded that opportunity by Crossroads. And I think that's really important that people understand that because they have taken the moral high ground through this whole thing and really presented themselves as the faithful ones. And from our perspective, it's just so backwards. We don't agree with their thinking about COVID. We don't think that the COVID was handled well. I mean, I don't know if anyone who thinks that the pandemic was handled well, but um, it's not like we think that the government was so great and all of this. That's not it. But given the uncertainty and a number of other factors, we just didn't really have a big problem following the mandates. And, it wasn't important for us to, to practice civil disobedience. I mean, there was really no, desire to do that. So, um, the last thing there was, Nate talking about the ones that take church seriously. Now I know for a fact that some of the 50 that Nate is laughing about driving away, they were serving in the church, myself included. Um, I guess I'm not mad at what they're doing over there. I mean, they've got all these people over there now. That's fine. I mean, that's no problem at all. But I think it's important that people understand that um, Nate Nate and the elders did not provide any opportunity for the believers who felt compelled to follow the mandates. They did not provide any opportunity at all for them to come together in a physical gathering. No, they did. They did for most of the pandemic, but at the end there, it was they took our way or the highway approach, and it was really weird. And it seems to be a real mark of this movement and something that they're really defining themselves by, even though things have been back to normal in Canada for it seems like most of the year, most of 2022, things have been pretty normal. So, but anyhow, I just wanted to make this video. I'm going to post it on the internet because when you see Nate laughing about this, that's 50 people who he's just laughing about driving them away. And this isn't something that we took lightly. This had a big impact on us, trying to find a new church. I wouldn't say that we're, really settled into anywhere yet. We're commuting to church right now. And yeah, I just think that it's pretty sad that he's got this attitude about the whole thing. But that's our point of view, and we we don't think that we're perfect in all of this, and a lot of talk about reconciliation. I was just there's a guy that keeps popping up into my YouTube feed because I do watch YouTube when I'm working at my desk or something like that. I don't watch it, I listen to it, but or if I'm driving in the car, I'll put something on. And it's funny who YouTube thinks I should listen to, but there's an American man who's moved to Canada, and his name's his name's Dean Lentini. And I listened to something about him the other day, and they were talking about the need to or the desire to reconcile. And it's like, well, it's really not that hard, folks. Like, I mean, I have to admit that when I comment on these guys' channels or whatever, it's in a colorful and fun sort of way, but there's no direct communication. It's like, well, I'm gonna put out a video about you, and you're gonna put out a video about me, and you're watching these two sides, and they're totally misrepresenting each other, and it's like. Why don't you just pick up the phone and, it's like, apologize. I mean, I've already emailed the elders at our old church. I emailed Nate, I expressed, I reached out, but, no hand extended back. So it's actually funny as the video goes on, these guys, see if I can find it here in the video. The one guy, he's saying, you need to repent. It's like, you know what? I mean, we have sins that weigh on our
So
heads.
guys, before I let you go, the last question I want, it didn't seem like
Where is it here?
In our province right now, and I have buddies who are still in those conferences, and I'm like, hey, are you masking? And they're like, no. Like, the government, the one that you've told your people to submit to is recommending masking. Now, the government has not yet said we're going to show up the way that we want.
We're not going to fine you this time.
We're not going to fine you right now. We're recommending it. Schools are going back.
This is so petty. And I'm not sure about anyone who's masking right now. I mean, nobody's out there masking right now, but I think in the real world we call that a CYA, buddy. That's called the government doing a CYA. It's a bit vulgar, but that's what they call it in the world, right? That's why they're recommending it.
Into mask mandates, everything. So they're privately all meeting right now, unmasked, just living life. And the only difference is not that the government's not recommending it, it's that the government's not recommending with a threat of punishment.
That's right.
So it's an amount of hypocrisy where we're all saying to those guys, come back, like repent, smart enough, just admit that you were wrong. And they're living in a hypocrisy while not doing anything. And you know what? We pray for them. I say we.
So I guess it's a hypocrisy when you wear your mask into Costco then, huh? Anyhow, that's my point of view, and I'm going to try to get this up on YouTube. And it is my hope that there is reconciliation. I've got no hard feelings whatsoever towards anyone, as far as I know. As I was saying, I've got many sins that weigh on my conscience, and we are at war with our flesh and the spirit of the age. And there's really no burden on many of our consciences regarding following the mandates for COVID. It's just not something that we feel bad about. And sure, we want to gather in the proper manner, just like everyone else. And that's not to say the traditional Western evangelical meeting is the proper way. I mean, I really feel like that's the elephant in the room here. Like, this all started with COVID, which is not true. I mean, I remember it was probably about 8 years ago. I was working for another municipality. It was the first time I worked with the municipality, and I remember. My colleagues who were by no means believers in Jesus. They were prepping me for the orientation at the city, and it was a big joke about the training with the trans stuff, which nobody even really knew about that. Honestly, nobody, that wasn't even on anyone's radar. 7, 8 years ago, until I think it was that show I Am Jazz. It's just like, suddenly, So these things that have been building up for a long time, and I'm surprised that the church was so blindsided by this. Really, I mean, for those of us who are in the world on a day-to-day basis, I mean, we kind of seen this coming, and yeah. So anyway, I'm gonna try to get this up on the internet and hopefully start a little bit of a dialogue around this thing. If you got something to say in the comments, please do. I will engage. Nobody will speak to me on their channel anymore. Nobody will speak to me on their channel. So maybe they won't speak to me on my channel either. But it is my prayer that there will be reconciliation around these issues. And I pray that there can be forgiveness and a greater understanding and for one another. But anyway,